Okay, I think I'm going to get started. I'm sure we'll have some other people join us as we go through the introduction. But firstly, hello and welcome everybody to the COMET Call to Action webinar. Thank you for being here today. I'm Claire Dean, the Community Outreach Manager for COMET. Three of our task force conveners, Adam, Juan Pablo, and John, will be presenting for you today. We welcome a lot of new faces here today to learn about COMET, and also many of our COMET participants who have been here with us contributing to the task force. We've been a task force since November of last year, when, as you'll hear, over 80 participants and advisors answered our community call to convene. We've done a lot since then, and we're excited to share our outcomes. Today, we're going to be delivering approximately a 30-minute presentation, which we'll be recording, which will be followed by an optional 15 minutes Q&A for those who want to hang on, which we won't be recording. That recording will then be made available later in the week if you'd like to review any of the content or pass along to your networks. We won't be addressing the questions until the end, but please drop any questions that you might have into the chat as they occur to you, and we will address as many of those as we can at the end of the meeting. Any that we don't get to, we will respond to via email to those who asked the question. So today we're going to be starting out by defining the problem that we're looking to solve. We're going to showcase what we did, explore where we are now, and then discuss next steps. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Adam to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Buttrick, one of the conveners of COMET. I'm based at the California Digital Library. To get things started, I wanted to provide some framing for the task force work to date, specifically the problem, as Claire said, we've all been working together to solve. Next slide, please. So at a very high level, we can state this problem as the following. We all need persistent identifiers with high quality metadata. We all work tirelessly to produce this high quality metadata. Despite all of these efforts, this work that we do is still too disconnected from each other. Okay, so what does that mean in real terms? Next slide, please.
Sorry.
That's fine. So let's consider a concrete example, how DOI metadata is currently being produced. DOIs operate using what we could call a push model, meaning that their metadata is created by some entity who then deposits it with a DOI registration agency. From that point forward, it's really the creator that is only responsible for its upkeep. Even if others discover errors in what's been registered or could improve it in some fashion, it's only the original depositor who can make these changes. If the depositor lacks the ability to improve things or simply just doesn't see the value in doing so, it remains incomplete or incorrect. Next slide. But DOI metadata, as we all know, doesn't just have producers, it also has consumers. So it has researchers, librarians, funders, institutions who rely on this information being correct and complete for all kinds of work, discovery, attribution, analysis. Many of these consumers are actually also stakeholders in the works that are being described. So authors responsible for the research, funders who have sponsored the research, institutions where the work was performed. Despite their undeniable and fully legitimate role in the creation of the scholarly record, they lack any real options to make improvements to DOIs they did not create themselves. Next slide. So what do they do then in response to these limitations? Researchers, funders, institutions, they route around them. They work with DOI metadata downstream from its source. Various services step in, consume that same DOI metadata, and allow those users to fill in the gaps, enriching it and adding back in what their real-world workflows need to be successful. Unfortunately, because these improvements are also scattered across different services and platforms, they end up becoming siloed, making it hard for everyone to see and benefit from this work. Next slide. This siloing and fragmentation has a number of consequences. First, it creates large-scale inefficiencies through duplicated effort. When one organization invests time and resources into improving metadata, those improvements remain trapped within that siloed system. Other organizations then have to repeat this work, multiplying total cost and time spent. Second, It introduces significant operational risks. These enrichments are often siloed within specific commercial services or local platforms. If an organization loses access to them, whether due to cost increases, a service being discontinued, or strategic changes at their operation, they can suddenly lose years of careful work. Third, it also just kind of fundamentally undermines the authority and consistency persistent identifiers were meant to provide. When different services make different, potentially conflicting improvements to the same metadata, we don't really have a path towards resolving any of those differences. Next slide. So that's the problem statement. We can think of it as where we are right now. But the goal of our work on COMET is to say, we can change this. We can acknowledge how the scholarly record is actually being produced by its many stakeholders. We can create a shared system that can collect, validate, and include the community's enrichment work in persistent identifier metadata. What would this mean? Next slide. So instead of enrichments being bound to specific services, we decouple them, allowing them to exist independently and be shared in a format that any service can produce. A validation layer then acts as a trusted broker where we combine various forms of automated rules with expert review to ensure quality, while also tracking the provenance of submission. This creates a clear and trusted path for enrichments to then flow back to the source. Next slide. When enrichments are decoupled in this way, we get all of those benefits back. The whole community can see and validate and build upon them. Organizations can switch systems without losing years of effort. We can leverage different strengths across services while ensuring that the improvements remain accessible to all, even if those services change or disappear. Most importantly, these validated enrichments become a permanent part of the scholarly record, creating a system of constant refinement, where every improvement strengthens our shared foundation, regardless of where it originated. Okay, so that is the problem statement, what the task force set out to solve, and we can maybe think of it as an initial sketch of the solution. Of course, making that sketch of the solution kind of a full, beautiful, well-rendered picture requires even more thought and discussion with stakeholders. The good news here is that the task force also took on that challenge. So I'm now going to turn things over to my colleague Juan Pablo to discuss how this was done. Juan?
Thanks, Adam, for laying that out so clearly. Yeah, so I'm Juan Pablo Alpern. I'm the scientific director of the Public Knowledge Project and another one of the conveners of the task force. I want to give a little bit of both the origin story and an outline just briefly. And I know many of you, and just looking across the names on the list, I see that that many of you have participated throughout the process. But but just want to give a little bit of a description of the work that we've done so that we get a sense of where we're at today. So if we can just go to the next slide, please. You know, the task force sort of was born out of first of some discussions that were sort of had informal discussions and gatherings at the Force 11 meeting in Los Angeles, and then again at the Paris conference for the Barcelona Declaration on Open Research Information. But really, actually, its origins go back in some sense a lot further than that. I think probably most of you in this room, like me, have been a long time both maybe producers or definitely consumers of this kind of PID metadata. You've struggled with these challenges and you have had conversations with your colleagues and peers, or you have at least been around these conversations, around these struggles that have really we've been grappling with for a long time. I think the problem, as Adam outlined it, sort of lays it clear that we have been either working with information that has been in some of these curated silos, or we've worked to help to create them, or in some ways tried to figure out ways of working around some of the challenges and thinking about the different initiatives that have existed over the years of trying to address the challenges with PID metadata quality and completeness, and thinking around how is it that as a community we can address these. So from these discussions, sort of the real conclusion that came from that was that not only were there a lot of people that were facing these similar challenges, it was sort of felt like a culmination of these conversations, and it felt that there was an energy and an enthusiasm for actually trying to get together to solve these problems. And I think that sort of inspired the formal sort of the creation of the task force itself as a moment to try to establish and gather to see if we could try to formalize these efforts and try to galvanize the community in helping to take steps to make them happen. As Claire already sort of alluded to, we received over sort of 80 responses of different people that wanted to participate and be a part of this. And we can just go to the next slide for a second quickly. This is just some of the faces, of looking across of the people that have shared their image with us to a lot of you, and I can see, I can recognize both some matching up some of the faces to some of the names on the call. So just to give a sense, this really was a gathering then of the community of people that were like-minded and interested in taking part. So then the next step was the work that the ASTIL task force did. We can just go to the next slide. The idea of the task force was actually to try to do some engagement with all of these actors. So like I said, we sort of felt from those initial conversations that happened in Los Angeles and in Paris that there was interest in having these conversations. People were very much ready to engage and think about how we might be able to solve some of these challenges as a community. And so the goal then became to try to do a consultation to try to gather some input from this community around what are some of the challenges, needs, and use cases for improving PID metadata. And to help articulate some of the problems that we share from our different vantage point, from different kinds of stakeholders and different kinds of users and producers of this PID metadata, and try to identify a way forward. If you can go to the next slide. So what we did to help to do that community engagement was to hold a series of listening sessions. We've held 3 different sessions, one's on vision and governance, one on product and sort of understanding better what some of the technical requirements would be and another one on sort of working through a mock implementation scenario as a way of sort of gathering some of this feedback. The idea was to sort of take input from the community. We then, as the conveners of the task force, helped to provide some summaries from some of those discussions. And so this took place both in rooms like this, where we then broke out and had discussions with the people that participated in the rooms, and also on documents that we sent as read-aheads that people were able to provide their written feedback on. I said, as the conveners, we then try to synthesize and gather the commonalities, the threads that sort of seem to be emerging from those discussions to try to put together some documents that, in some sense, captured what were the different perspectives, the different ideas, and the different challenges identified by the members of the community, so that we could have a better understanding both of what is the vision for what we think can be accomplished together, but also to try to understand what is the rough shape of what a solution to go forward to try to solve it might look like. If you can go just to the next slide. We've published, and we can certainly, we'll put the link, this is all linked from the website. We can certainly also put it in the chat here. If you really want to dig deep into some of these summaries and take a look at the work that was sort of the gathered work that we did, the summaries that we've put together, we've tried to document this as best possible and put it together into as a Nodo community as a way of making sure that this was captured so that whatever shape the next step looks forward, whoever steps up to this call to action that John will talk a little bit about more in a moment, they have the input from the community. The real goal of COMET, the task force up until now, has really been to be able to act as a way of sort of, like, as we say, convening and bringing together the different perspectives of the stakeholders and see if we could try to sort of gather what are the things that we share in common and some of the ideas that as a community we have going forward. If we're going to do something that is collaborative around trying to address the metadata challenges that we face, then it needs to be have at least this community input and have this community leadership be a part of how we move forward. And so we've done our best to try to both convene and gather those perspectives in a somewhat structured way, but also to document them in the same similar kind of structured way so that it can be taken up and someone can do something with. Go to just my last slide. I think that in our sessions, as we work through the implementation solutions, we sort of identified sort of pilot opportunities to sort of try to test this community-driven approach to improving PID metadata, just as in an implementation scenario, as we sort of discussed, what are the specific pieces of metadata that could be good starting points. And we've started to discuss those, and some of those started to emerge from the community discussions around some of the things in the challenges with metadata that would be easier to address and that might be a good candidates for starting points to try to test out whether we can work as a community and come to agreements in both the substance of what the enrichments of the metadata would be, but also to test out and pilot out the process by which we might be able to do this together in a way that is collaborative and that leads to a consensus around the work that needs to be done. So we can go to the next slide, and I'll use that to turn it over to John, because that sort of takes us up to where we are today. John, all yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Juan. My name is John Chodacki, and I'm the director of the University of California Curation Center. And I thank everybody for being here and all the people who are involved in the process up till today. As Juan said, we spent a lot of time bringing people together and discussing this. Our goal with COMET has always been to articulate the needs of the community fully, both the challenges and the opportunities with this type of a model, and build off of work that's been done in the past. So we know that there are many initiatives and many trials along the way, both internally within organizations, but also externally across the community that have come before us. We know we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Our intent is truly to articulate the current state of thinking around how we could collectively, as a wider community, as a global community, tackle this problem. And so what we've been trying to focus on with this discussion for the last month since November is really understanding what people think, what people are doing right now, and what people see as a plausible and viable next step. Next slide, please. And so we know that we have the will. We know we are able to articulate the way. And so as we move forward from here, as we close down the listening and the articulation and the working group side of the task force and move towards a call to action, we really want to look about how we can start building a collective means to make some positive change. And so we here in this room obviously are very interested in this topic. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. It's something that many people have been trying to think about doing and know that there needs to be critical mass and collective action on this. And so what we want to do with the call to action that we have in front of you and that we've posted online and we're going to have open until May 1st is to really try to get people energized and interested in articulating what resources they have to pull together to make some positive change. Next slide. We've obviously had great participation from the community already. We have a strong network of potential collaborators that have already contributed to this process. We know there are other projects that did not participate directly in COMET, but are aligned and have similar goals and have taken steps to make positive change. And so what we want to do now is to really try to unite these siloed efforts through articulation of resources and plans and ideas that the community has that they can bring together towards whatever comes next that helps fulfill the COMET vision. Next slide. So really, what does that mean? What does it mean to make the COMET vision a reality, right? It sounds like a very lofty goal. What we're talking about here is not just, can somebody please give us money or people or in kind? I mean, that's definitely part of what we're trying to ask for. I mean, we are asking for organizations or groups or people who are interested in offering up resources, real resources, more than just a couple afternoons a year. We're talking about 50% of FTEs, full-time FTEs, in-kind contributions, financial contributions, grant funding, financial funding. If there's opportunities like that, that's actually what we are asking for and looking for. But on top of that, we're also looking for ways for people to contribute who have been involved in this for a while, who don't have those types of resources available. And that includes being involved in whatever the future might be from a governance perspective, as well as the technical infrastructure perspective, and also on launching pilots. And so if you go through the documentation that Juan mentioned up on Zenodo or also on the website, you'll find that there's a really great write-up of issues and ideas and challenges and opportunities in each of these categories to review that came from the COMET process. And really will help if you're interested in responding to the call to action for you to understand what the potential resources or ideas that could help the community are. For example, within the governance section, there are a lot of possibilities, not only being involved in some sort of steering or board level decision making, but also on thinking through what community action can can and should be when it comes to curatorial decisions. As Adam was mentioning, the new model, however it is going to be enacted, is going to need that kind of decision making and participation for the long haul. It's not going to be a one-time process. So there's a lot of nuances. If you have curatorial pipelines, decision-making rubrics that you have developed, if you have ways of thinking about this type of thing that we're referring to, it's important for us to get that as part of the community call to action so that we can start to bring these different resources and projects around the world together towards a future coalition. The same is true for technical infrastructure. It'd be great for us to find groups that have existing technical infrastructure or budgets or funding for technical infrastructure. This type of work does cost money. And so we are asking for people to respond to the community call to action who are interested in that type of donation or contribution. We are also interested in people who just have experimented with this in the past and have learnings that from their previous experimentation or production pipelines that they know they can offer some guidance from their way of working. So if you have something or work in that way, we really would love for you to, or if you know other groups that you benefit from or that you're involved in, we really would love for you to respond to the community call to action, articulate what those resources are, what you have been able to achieve, and what you potentially could bring together in a future coalition to solve these problems. And the last category is around pilots. I mean, obviously, this is one that most of us here have, either been involved in or benefited from. As Adam and Juan said, there are a lot of projects that have been created and experimented. That's what has inspired us to be here. Why we are here is because many of us do enrichments on our own in silos. So those types of siloed activities are a future version of a COMET inspired team working on enrichment pilots. We can take the learning and the pilots that have happened from your projects and we can use them to benefit the world. So if you have data feeds or processes or pipelines for enrichment or approaches to that, or actual data files that would be helpful, that's what we would love to hear about. And again, this can be organizational commitments, which, I mean, this is a long-term project. We're interested in doing this and helping build a coalition for the long haul. But we also know that if you are, you're not able to make that type of commitment, temporary or one-time donations of data files are also something that can really help seed this future initiative. Next slide. And so what we've done is called a community call to action, which I think for some people, it just kind of makes sense, those words. And for some people, they say, what does that even mean? And, I like community, I like action, I like getting on a call, but how does it all fit together? Why are we calling it that way? I think just as we go to the next slide, the reason why we wanted to call it a community call to action is because we, again, are just conveners trying to articulate what you and the community have been thinking and struggling with. We're not interested in ourselves being the ones to hijack this process. We really want the community to articulate what kind of energy and resources that you have out there and how we could patch that together into a long-term coalition. This has happened before. We have, as a community, built coalitions like this before to tackle these problems. We in the task force use ROAR, the Registry for Research Organizations, as a great example of how the community came together through a task force like this, articulated a problem, and the resulting efforts was in-kind contribution from organizations and financial donations and seed file donations from the community to make it happen. We can do this because we did that, and we do so much more through these types of models. And so what we want from each of you, and what we're inviting you to do, is to respond to the call to action. The blog post is up, it's in chat. We will be doing promotion throughout the next month, 2 months, talking to people who have been part of COMET, people who are not. If you're interested in having a detailed conversation with us, please reach out to the conveners, reach out to Claire. We'll set up a time to talk to you. We really would love thoughtful submissions to this. And, again, the types of categories of things that we're thinking are, if your organization is willing to make direct resource contributions through funding or in-kind contributions, that's going to be a requirement. We absolutely need that. But also, if you have metadata enrichments, data sets for initial testing or validation, that's also something that would be great to hear about for us to be able to work with. And then third, if you have strong opinions about how this should be guided for the future, we definitely need community guidance. And so participation in future structures like that is going to be a requirement. And so these are just 3 ideas of the types of submissions or documents that you might submit through the community call to action. You could maybe think of others. We really don't want to be too prescriptive. We just wanted to offer some boilerplate ideas so that it inspires what we're looking for. And articulates what we're looking for. But if you have other ideas, please submit them as well. We're more interested in getting everybody here who is truly interested in this idea together and part of the future than anything else. Next slide. So when we have this community call to action, there's logistically what it means is you discussing within your own organizations and within your own coalitions and friends and colleagues, discussing what potentially you could be a part of, what the duration of resource or data files or governance that how long you might want to be involved, formally or informally writing it down. It's not as important for us to receive something that's on letterhead, but if it's important from your organization's perspective, that is definitely something you can look at doing. But also what we're looking for is just teams or people sitting down and really thoughtfully thinking about what participation they might be able to offer. Again, this is not something that is fully baked, right? Like, we're not saying we have an entire system and you're just going to slot right into it. What we're talking about here is who would like to be involved in building it right now together. Like, so who is willing to put in the resources to really sit down and build something together based on these ideas that the task force articulated. And that's the ideas that you have along that vein would be great to get submitted into the Google form by May 1st. We will then be, the conveners will be going through those and discussing with the submitters and the community next steps and how we may be able to structure projects going forward that fulfill many of the dreams and aspirations from the task force. Next slide. So we want to thank you. I mean, I know a lot of you were involved in the task force. I'm also noticing there's a lot of people who were not, so it's great to have new faces.